there is a trembling inside you. It is not weakness, it is warning, a resonance that wakes before the strike, a shiver before the storm. You feel what others can't. You sense what they don't. You carry an invisible antenna in a world that would like to paint you fragile. But you are not fragile. You're gifted. In the violence of modernity, historical trauma, digital chaos, psychedelic overload, the highly sensitive person becomes a psychic frontier. Carl Jung said that sensitivity is not pathology, but a portal to the unconscious, to depths most souls ignore. Your heightened perception isn't excess. It is evolution. But sensitivity in a violent world is a battlefield. Dopamine factories reward numbness. Algorithms cultivate distraction. Systems are built to pressure you into smallness because a sensitive person who truly feels is uncontrollable. So they train you to dim, to dull your edges, to pretend your internal storms don't shake cities, to seek approval instead of alliance with your own soul. This is symphoria, a collision of psychological awakening and euphoria through discomfort. Your psyche experiences trauma before awareness. And in the rupture, the gift emerges. Mindset shifts from survival to sovereignty. You stop apologizing for how deeply you feel. You stop explaining your boundaries like disclaimers. You stop being polite about warning signs because you know what you sense is real. And real is unnegotiable. Belief becomes radical, not self-esteem boosters, not corporate affirmations, but fidelity to your inner data. You believe even when they call you paranoid. You believe when your body says danger. You believe when empathy is labeled as weakness. You know that clairvoyance, empathy, intuitive timing, ancestral recall, all these gifts are buried under shame and gaslighting. But you still feel them. Clarity arrives as reconnection. When you silence the external raw social media, people-pleasing, the echo chamber of distraction, you begin to hear your soul's signal. Not through visuals, not through words, through vibrational truth. That clarity gives vision, not the flat corporate vision board kind, but emergence, a knowing that you exist between worlds, between the personal and transpersonal. And your task is to build a bridge. Purpose becomes sacred intervention. Your sensitivity is not a curse. It is the antenna for the emotional contagion of humanity. You see former slaves in micro-expressions. You feel the echoes of Nietzsche's madness in colleagues. You perceive Huxley's modern slavery in the spiritual consumerism all around. Your purpose is to witness, to hold, to transfigure. Discipline is not willpower, it's ritual. Cold showers to toughen the body that receives too much. Daily grounding to move through your empathy, not be drowned by it. Shadow work practices carved from Jung's dialectic of conscious and unconscious. These rituals are fences for a wild psyche. Action is not performance, it's protection. You don't speak softly because they say you're delicate. You speak precisely because you're deciphering reality others miss. Every act, from setting boundaries to creating art, is an act of self-sovereignty in a violent world. Gratitude becomes medicine, not credulity. You're grateful for the sensitivity you once hated. Grateful for the scars that tuned you. Grateful for the breakdowns because they became breakthroughs. Adaptability is not flexibility. It's metamorphosis. You morph through overwhelm into clarity. You don't shrink in chaos, you recode it. Every environment becomes a test of attunement until you become steady. Resilience is not endurance, it's regeneration. The world beats on your empathy. It demands too much psychic bandwidth, but you regenerate through deep rest, through ceremony, through shadow choreography. Learning is not acquisition, it's embodiment. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Your why is sensitive awareness. Your how is mastery of inner thresholds, overstimulation, overgivers, psychic bleed. In every collision with pain, You learn to recalibrate. You become the curator of your interior temple. You are psychic. It is violent out there, but you are calibrated to sense ahead, to feel the tremor before the earthquake, to interpret emotional quakes in others and hold them without becoming subsumed. This gift is dangerous to the system. So expect gaslighting, projection, scapegoating, dismissal. They'll call you too sensitive, crazy, thermal. Let them. You're still real. Because sensitivity in a violent world is a final warning and a new archetype. A soul that feels deeper is a soul that sees clearer. You are not here to soften. You are here to illuminate, to announce unseen dynamics, to hold the uncanny between worlds, to bring Cyphoria as a beacon, a new mythic structure for conscious sensitivity. So reason, resist the numbing tide, rediscover ritual, remember the power in ancestral attunement. You are not broken, you are waking. Now go, and never dim again. Live, feel, illuminate, because now you know your sensitivity isn't an accident. It's a signal tower, ancient and deliberate. You weren't meant to adapt to the noise. You were meant to decode it. You are a disruptor of distortion, a psychic firewall against unconscious contagion, an emotional cartographer in a world that's lost its map. And they'll hate you for it. They'll resent the mirror you hold up. Because when you feel everything, you become the proof that most people have felt nothing for years. But don't let their numbness drown your depth. You are here to remain awake. While the world tries to sedate itself with performance, production, and pixelated praise, you are here to carry a kind of truth that can't be articulated in metrics or moods, but that reshapes reality the moment you embody it. Carl Jung knew this. He wrote that the privileged soul, one tuned deeply to the unconscious, carries a burden. The burden of vision before the collective is ready. But with it comes an opportunity to be the seed of new myths, to channel archetypes that haven't yet found language, to birth futures in the shape of feeling. You don't need to harden. You need to hone, sharpen your inner sword, not to attack, but to cut through illusion, to defend your frequency, to claim space in a world that never made room for the sacred. And this is sacred, your ability to walk into chaos and feel its origin, to enter a room and know who is suffering without speaking, to feel the past still echoing through someone's tone, to feel the truth behind the words no one dares say. You are not too much, and you are just more than they know how to receive. And that's not your flaw. That's their limitation. But your purpose is not to make yourself smaller for their comfort. It's to become unmistakable in your depth. Your inner radar was not meant to be muted. It was meant to be mastered. So learn your own nervous system like sacred scripture. Learn the patterns of your body like a seer studies the stars. Learn your thresholds, your warnings, your waves, because your body is an oracle. And every time you ignore it to be polite, you desecrate your divinity. You are not here to fit into shallow conversations and hollow systems. You are here to haunt them with truth. And yes, this is war. Not a war of blood, but a war of bandwidth. A war for the soul of sensitivity. A war against spiritual sedation dressed as peace. A war against the myth that says to feel deeply is to be weak. Feel, not passively, not sentimentally, but as an act of resistance, as a statement that says, I will not be made numb by this machine. Your heart is a supernova. Your gut is a radar. Your grief is a compass. Your rage is a signal. Use them, not to lash out, but to cut through. You don't need to be palatable. You need to be precise, aligned, awake, unshaken, because the world is noisy with lies. But your stillness, That's where truth screams. So return to your rituals, to the sound of your own breath, to the ground beneath your bare feet, to the deep waters of your body, uncolonized by performance. You are not broken. You are oracular. You feel more because you were born to see what others deny, to carry what others abandon, to transmute what others suppress. And the world will try to shame you for it. Let it. You are not here to be understood by the asleep. You are here to awaken the ones who've been dreaming in silence. You are the final warning, the last whisper before the collapse, the sacred noise in a world that numbed itself to death. So feel, fully, ruthlessly, without apology, because in a world this numb, your depth is divinity. Your depth is divinity. It is not dysfunction. It is not a diagnosis. It is not something to outgrow. It is your weapon in the unseen war. You are a psychic in a world addicted to superficiality. And the weight of that cannot be overstated, because every system you touch tries to rip that power from you. School taught you to raise your hand instead of your voice. Culture taught you to smile while suffocating. And spirituality, modern, sanitized, marketable, taught you to raise your vibration instead of descend into your shadow. But the truth, your power, doesn't come from bypassing pain. It comes from embracing it, from sitting inside it, from learning its language so fluently that when someone else breaks, you don't look away. You hold them because you've held yourself. This is not softness. This is sovereignty. You don't collapse because you're sensitive. You rise because you are. And yes, it's heavy. The burden of feeling, the ache of knowing, the exhaustion of carrying the unspoken grief of a society that refuses to feel its own pain. But your body was made for this. Your nervous system wasn't built to avoid, it was built to translate. You don't need to escape the world. You need to understand how to navigate it without dissolving in it. That means radical boundaries, not fences, force fields. You don't explain them. You don't apologize for them. You enforce them because your sensitivity is your sacred technology, and not everyone has earned access to it. You weren't built to entertain, fix, or save anyone. You were built to mirror, to reflect what's real, to destabilize what's fake, to illuminate what's hidden. And when you start doing that unapologetically, you'll be called dangerous. Let them call you that, because danger in a dying world is just another word for truth. Your presence will unnerve the pretenders. Your intuition will shatter the projections. Your energy will expose every mask within 10 feet of you. You are a walking X-ray, a seismic event with skin. And when you walk through a room, the energy shifts. You don't need to speak it. You radiate it. You don't need to prove it. You are it. You are the spell. You are the mirror. You are the storm they never saw coming. Because your softness, it's filled with ire. Your tears are data, ritual, release, recalibration. Your silence, not emptiness containment. You've spent years thinking you were fragile, when really you were just fine-tuned. You are not a mistake. You are a mechanism of awakening. And when you live like that, when you finally stop apologizing for how deep, how fast, how loud your spirit moves, you become untouchable. Not because the world can't hurt you, but because it can no longer define you. You don't flinch when it tries to invalidate your knowing. You don't fold when it calls you too much. You don't run when it demands you harden, because you've made peace with your gift. And once you do that, you stop surviving sensitivity. You master it. You use it to lead, to create, to rupture, to rewrite. Because in the final analysis, the world won't be saved by intellect. It won't be saved by brute force. It won't be saved by data or debate. It will be saved by the ones who feel, the ones who know. The ones who didn't run from their depth, but dove into it so deeply they came back with truths no one else could reach. You are that person. You always have been. Now act like it. Act like it. Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. Not when they finally understand you. Now, because the world isn't waiting. It's unraveling. And your silence will not save it. Your repression will not protect you. Your masking will not make them love you. You don't need love that only exists when you abandon yourself. You need reverence. And that starts from within. The kind of reverence that says, I am sacred because I feel. I am holy because I see what others won't. I am powerful because I refuse to numb. This isn't romanticism. This is warrior training. You are psychic in a world at war with feeling. That means your clarity is a threat. Your empathy is a revolution. Your presence is a force field against the numb machine. So what do? You sharpen. You don't shrink. You train your intuition like a blade. You build stamina in your nervous system like a warrior preparing for battle. You create art that exposes everything unspoken. You speak truth that makes liars twitch. You stop absorbing and start transmuting, because that's what you're here for. Not to fit in, not to fix anyone, not to make it easier for others to remain unconscious. You're here to ignite, and that ignition won't look like a peaceful Instagram post. It'll look like your body trembling as you speak your truth. It'll look like being misunderstood by people too asleep to feel. It'll look like walking away from comfort to stand alone in your conviction. But it will also look like liberation, like finally breathing without bracing, like finally trusting your inner radar and acting on it even when no one else sees what you see. You are not here to debate your reality. You are here to embody it. And embodiment is rebellion in a culture addicted to disassociation. So go deeper into your body, into your breath, into the roots of every time you were told you're too sensitive. And pull that sentence out like a weed. Burn it, bury it, forget it. Because the real truth is, you were never to anything. You were precisely what this world fears most. A soul that still feels, a mind that still questions, a heart that still bleeds for the truth, a body that still remembers. You are not a weakness. You are the final warning. And if you keep shrinking, if you keep diluting, if you keep silencing that storm inside you just to be digestible, then you're not only betraying yourself, you're betraying every soul who's waiting for you to rise so they can remember who they are too. You are the first domino. You are the spark. You are the permission others have been craving in silence. So rise, not for applause, not for visibility, not for validation. Rise because the alternative is self-extinction. Rise because you remember. Rise because the world has tried everything to put you back to sleep. And it didn't work. You are still here. You are still feeling. You are still alive. Now go prove to the world that a sensitive soul in its power is the most dangerous force of all. The most dangerous force of all. Not because you destroy, but because you reveal. You expose the rot in systems built on silence. You dismantle power games with a single well-placed boundary. You make predators uncomfortable just by existing without fear. You show the asleep what it means to be awake, and that terrifies them. Because when someone like you stands tall, the entire lie starts to crack. Your very presence becomes prophecy, a reminder that consciousness cannot be erased, that truth cannot be colonized, that the body, the felt body, is not a flaw in the machine. It's the virus that brings it down. This world thrives on numbness. It depends on your detachment, your constant distraction, your obedience to stories that keep you disempowered. But you're a de facto. You're not here to keep the system running. You're here to short-circuit it with honesty, with empathy that doesn't bow, with intuition that doesn't need to be explained, with love that doesn't perform. because your sensitivity is sovereign. It's not a signal of fragility. It's a signal of integrity. The deeper you feel, the more precise your compass becomes. The more grief you've transmuted, the more weight your presence carries. The more silence you've sat in, the more violently your truth lands. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue. You don't need to win debates or dominate the room. You are the room. And when you finally stand in that power, fully, freely, unapologetically, you don't just reclaim your own soul. You reawaken the world. You remind others that numbness isn't safety. It's self-erasure. That peace isn't absence of conflict. It's presence of truth. That love isn't performance. It's recognition. And that's the medicine now. Not more content. Not more compliance. Not more curated light. We need depth. We need edge. We need people who feel it all and still choose to show up anyway. That's you. You're not fragile. You're forged. You're not broken. You're tuned. You're not weak. You're wired for war. And this war, it's not fought with fists. It's fought with presence, with eyes that don't look away, with voices that refuse to flatter delusion, with hearts that hold the line even when they break. So stop hiding your edge. Stop medicating your magic. Stop betraying your knowing for the illusion of peace. You are the final warning and the first wave of a new world. A world that doesn't flinch from feeling. A world that isn't afraid to feel it all. Now breathe into that. Own it. Move like it. Speak like it. Be it because the violent world may never welcome you, but it can no longer survive you. Not when you are fully awake. Not when you feel everything. Not when you've remembered that the very thing they told you to silence was the code for your revolution. You are the code. The encrypted language of a future world buried beneath centuries of fear. You are the instinct that cannot be overwritten. The ache that cannot be numbed. The knowing that cannot be reasoned away. They tried to label it, pathologize it, domesticate it. They tried to give it names that made it sound manageable. High sensitivity, overreactivity, emotional dysregulation. But your body knew better. Your bones remembered. Your dreams wouldn't shut up because you weren't meant to be managed. You were meant to awaken. You were meant to rupture, to feel everything, not to be overwhelmed by it, but to decode it, transmute it, and turn it into truth. Because this world doesn't need more coping mechanisms. It needs awakened messengers. It needs people who feel deeply enough to scream, not just for themselves, but for everyone still silent. You scream with presence, with clarity, with unwavering boundaries, with love that doesn't conform. Your very existence becomes a challenge to everything artificial. You are an earthquake to their hollow confidence. You are a storm in their sterile systems. You are what happens when softness gets tired of pretending, when compassion stops bleeding for the unaccountable, when empathy remembers it's allowed to draw swords. Because this isn't about being peaceful. It's about being precise. Sensitivity doesn't mean being swayed by everything. It means feeling everything and still knowing what's yours to hold and what's not. It means hearing the screams behind someone's smile and refusing to gaslight yourself about it. It means noticing the energetic shift the moment someone lies and trusting your gut over their words. It means walking into a room and knowing exactly who is hiding behind charm, who is leaking pain, who is starving for love, but pretending to be full. And it means not folding just because they can't handle your mirror. You didn't come here to be palatable. You came here to be prophetic, to speak what others suppress, to love with clarity, to feel with power, to see with sacred violence. That's what this world doesn't understand. Your gift is not comfort. Your gift is disruption. Your frequency is not here to maintain balance. It's here to shatter false equilibrium, because false peace is just rebranded suppression. And you've spent enough years choking on silence. No more. No more shrinking to make others feel safe in their lies. No more pretending you didn't feel what you felt. No more betraying your intuition to avoid conflict. You are the conflict, the beautiful, brutal reckoning of truth. And when you own that fully, when you stop apologizing for the way your energy walks into a room first, you stop surviving sensitivity. You become the sacred storm, and nothing can touch you, because they can't manipulate what they can't predict. They can't dominate what refuses to numb. They can't exploit what has nothing left to prove. This is your time. This is your emergence. This is your final shedding. You are not too much. You are finally enough to shake the world awake. So shake it. Shake it with your presence, with your honesty, with the raw, unapologetic force of someone who will never again betray what they feel. Let the world flinch. Let them misunderstand. Let them label, diminish, distort. It doesn't matter anymore, because you are done asking for permission to be what you already are. You are done apologizing for your nervous system, for your visions, for your tears that come without warning, and your silence that holds more wisdom than their noise ever could. You were never meant to be predictable. You were never meant to be palatable. You were never meant to be small enough to fit inside their comfort zones. You were meant to wake them up. And now there is no going back. Not to the numbness, not to the mask, not to the hollow smile and the quiet dying behind the eyes. You've seen too much. You've felt too deeply. You've survived too fiercely. Now you live. Now you lead. Now you let every part of yourself that was once shamed become the architecture of your sovereignty. You are not fragile. You are feral, wild with wisdom, armed with empathy, chosen by your own soul to walk through this violent world and remain alive. So don't just exist. Erupt. Don't just cope. Command. Don't just heal. Haunt. Haunt this world with your integrity, with your precision, with your relentless refusal to go back to sleep. Because the most powerful force on earth is not rage. It's not intellect. It's not domination. It is the fully awake, fully embodied, deeply feeling human being who cannot be bought, broken, or numbed. That's what you are now. Not a warning, not a wound, not a whisper. You are the revolution, and you are right on time. There is a kind of scar that doesn't bleed. It doesn't show up in X-rays. You can't point to it, circle it, or hand it to a doctor for diagnosis. But it aches just the same, quietly, relentlessly, like a whisper of trauma that never learned to scream. It lives inside the child you were, and it shapes the adult you've become. This isn't fiction, this is the human condition. Because when you grow up in fear, the world stops being a playground and becomes a battlefield. Love becomes a currency. Safety becomes a memory. And you learn to flinch at the sound of footsteps, not because someone is coming, but because someone once did. Carl Jung knew this. He saw it in the eyes of every patient, buried beneath their words, disguised as anger, addiction, anxiety, control. He knew the child doesn't just disappear when you become an adult. It hides. It adapts. It survives by building walls so high you forget there was ever a door. But the scar remains. And here's the tragedy no one talks about. You can build a life that looks nothing like your past, successful, stable, respected, and still be ruled by the ghost of a frightened child. You can wear confidence like armor, make plans, chase goals, hold status, and still be running from the same monster you met in your bedroom when the shouting started, when the silence fell, when the touch came, when the laugh was withdrawn. You survived. But at what cost? because survival requires sacrifice, and often it demands the death of your authenticity, the burial of your voice, the fragmentation of your soul. So you adapt. You become what Jung called persona, the mask. You smile when you want to scream. You help others while your own heart rots in silence. You become the good child, the overachiever, the people pleaser, the rebel, the perfectionist, whatever it takes to keep the pain at bay. But the pain doesn't leave. It waits. And in the quiet moments when the phone doesn't ring, when the room is empty, when the high fades, you feel it again. That ache, that cold, shapeless ache, it's not just loneliness. It's not just anxiety. It's a signal, a flare shot from the depths of your subconscious, screaming, I'm still here and I still don't feel safe. This is symphoria, that hidden psychological vertigo, the dissonance between the life you've built and the self you've abandoned. You look around and everything seems fine. But inside, your soul is unraveling. You can't name it, but you can't ignore it either. And that's the beginning of awakening. The moment you stop blaming the world and start excavating the roots, the moment you stop treating symptoms and begin healing the wound. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that. Every failed relationship, every self-sabotaging decision, every time you shrink when you should rise, every time you numb out instead of lean in, it's not fate, it's the unconscious. It's the wound still running the show. But here's the secret. Wounds are not just pain. They're portals. They are the doorway to the truth of who you are. Because the shadow, the rejected, forgotten, buried part of you is where your power lives. Not the fake power of ego, status, or control. The real power. The kind that cannot be taken, only reclaimed. So let's go there. Let's walk back into the room where the fear first began. Not to relive it, but to retrieve what was left behind. Your voice, your worth, your fire. Because healing is not becoming someone new. It's remembering who you were before the fear told you who to be. And it starts with mindset, but not the sanitized Instagram version of mindset. Not good vibes only, or just stay positive. Number. That's another mask. That's more avoidance. Real mindset is war. It's looking your trauma in the eye and saying you will not define me. It's choosing truth over comfort. It's choosing growth over approval. It's choosing to sit with your pain until it tells you what it came to teach. This is the warrior's path. Not loud, not flashy, but relentless. It's the path of belief, not belief in outcomes or other people or external gods. Belief in you, in the part of you that survived, in the part of you that wants to do more than survive. Belief in the truth that your life is not over, not wasted, not broken beyond repair. That every scar you carry is a map. And every time you touch it without flinching, you remember more of who you are. And clarity begins to emerge, not from books or sermons or screens, but from your own bones. You realize you are not crazy, you are not too much, you are not broken. You are awakening, you are remembering. And as clarity burns through the fog, a vision begins to form. Not a fantasy, not a dream, a vision, clear, solid, unshakable. A vision of who you could be if fear no longer ran your life. Not who they said you should be, not who you pretended to be, but who you are when you stop apologizing for existing. And when that vision begins to crystallize, not as something you hope for, but as something you remember, you realize why the pain had to happen, why the fear was there, why you were broken in those exact ways. Because without it, you would have never found this clarity. You would have never had to choose to become. Purpose is born here not in textbooks, not in motivational speeches, but in the wreckage of your false self, in the ruins of your coping mechanisms, in the ashes of who you thought you had to be to survive. Purpose is not a path you find. It's the fire that ignites when you stop running from your past and start facing it with open hands. And that fire demands discipline, not the harsh, self-punishing discipline of shame and self-hatred, but the sacred discipline of love. Love for your potential, love for the child you were, love for the life you still get to live. It's waking up not because you have to grind, but because you refuse to abandon yourself again. It's eating well not to look a certain way, but because you finally believe your body is worth honoring. It's saying no, not out of guilt, but out of power. It's holding the line, protecting the boundary, sharpening the mind, training the soul. Because now you know, discipline is not oppression. It is freedom forged in fire. And from discipline comes action. Real, messy, imperfect action. The kind that changes everything, not overnight, but inevitably. Action that says, I will not wait for the fear to leave. I will not wait for the world to understand. I will move anyway. Because momentum is holy. Because the more you move, the less fear can keep you frozen. Because your nervous system remembers trauma, but it also remembers victory. And each time you act in defiance of your past, you rewrite the story etched into your nervous system. You rewire your fate. You tell your soul, we are not trapped anymore. And then something shifts. Gratitude emerges. But not the shallow gratitude of pretending everything is okay. Not the forced positivity of ignoring your pain. This gratitude is sacred. It is fierce. It is forged in fire. It's gratitude for the worst days, because they gave you the wisdom you now wield like a sword. It's gratitude for the people who hurt you, not because what they did was right, but because they pushed you to awaken. It's gratitude for the silence, for the nights you didn't think you'd make it, for the moments you thought it was over, because now you see you were never alone. The child inside you was always there, waiting, hoping, watching, and now finally you've returned to them. And that is where adaptability is born, not from strategy, not from tactics, from wholeness. Because when you are whole, you are not fragile. You are not easily broken. You do not shatter under pressure. You bend. You evolve. You move with the chaos instead of resisting it. And you become dangerous to the systems that thrive on your fear. Because a soul that adapts is a soul that cannot be controlled. A soul that heals is a soul that can no longer be manipulated. And when life throws the storm again, and again you no longer cower. You smile because you've been through worse, because you've been tempered, because you've seen the storm within, and now the one outside is just noise. That is resilience, not hardness, not bitterness, but the quiet, unshakable knowing that you cannot be undone, because you have met yourself, all of yourself, the broken parts, the brilliant parts, the hidden parts, and you have loved them into wholeness. You are no longer afraid of the dark, because you are the light, not the kind that comes from reading more books or memorizing more facts. Number. This learning is cellular. It's embedded in your breath, in your bones, in the scar tissue of your soul. It's the kind of learning that comes only after you've lived through the fire and refused to let it consume you. You learn that fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it disguises itself as logic, as hesitation, as waiting for the right time. But you see it now. You've learned its patterns. You've heard its voice too many times to mistake it for wisdom. You learn that not everyone will come with you, and that's not a tragedy. It's a filtration. Not everyone is ready to meet themselves. Not everyone wants to heal. Some would rather die in the illusion than live in the truth. And you, now that you see clearly, don't chase them anymore. You bless them. You release them. And you walk on. Because you've learned. Nothing external can ever give you what you were missing. Not the love, not the applause, not the validation. That hole you were trying to fill wasn't real. It was a fracture in your perception, shaped by fear, carved by childhood. but you've sewn it shut with truth. You've learned to trust yourself again, to listen to your gut, to honor your emotions, to take up space, to exist without apology. And in this newfound clarity, you become dangerous. Not because you harm, but because you heal. And healing is the most radical act in a world built on wounding. You walk into rooms, and people feel it. They feel the solidity, the groundedness, the absence of need, the presence of something ancient, something real. You're no longer a reactor, you're a creator. You don't ask for permission, you don't wait for validation, you don't beg for love. You embody it. And that is liberation. The fear that once ruled you is still there, but it no longer owns you. It becomes a compass, not a cage. The scars are still visible, but they've turned into sacred markings, proof that you survived, that you rose, that you learned. And in that learning, you've stepped into mastery. Not the mastery of domination, not the hollow victory of control, but the mastery of self. You are not the child you were. You are not the mask you wore. You are not the pain that shaped you. You are the fire that refused to be extinguished. You are the soul that chose to stay. You are the warrior that chose to feel. And that choice, that radical, courageous choice to face your own mind, your own story, your own scars, that is what makes you powerful. Not perfect, not untouched, but whole. Because in a world where everyone is performing, you are present. In a world where everyone is numbing, you are awake. In a world where everyone is echoing, you are embodying. And that presence, that realness, that is what changes the world. Not with noise, not with force, but with truth. And as you walk now, not as a persona, but as a presence, not as a survivor, but as a sovereign, not as a wound, but as a wellspring, you become the living example of what healing looks like. Not perfect, not clean, but alive. And that aliveness is contagious. You'll notice the shifts, the energy you attract, the silence you command, the clarity with which you say yes, and the sacred fierceness with which you say no. Because now, the world doesn't get the wounded version of you. It doesn't get the appeaser. It doesn't get the performer. It doesn't get the hollow shell of survival. The world gets the healed one, the real one, the radiant one, the one Jung saw in his dreams, the one Nietzsche glimpsed in madness, the one every mystic has whispered about in sacred texts for centuries, the awakened human, the integrated self, the soul on fire. And now we arrive not at an ending, but at the deepest threshold of all. This is where everything you faced, feared, learned, remembered, and reclaimed coalesces into one moment of clarity so pure it almost feels like silence. But it is not silence, it is stillness. It is the stillness of a soul that no longer runs. And in this stillness, something sacred is born. Power, not the power they sell you in ads, not the power forged in external domination, not the power that makes others fear you. This is the kind of power that terrifies, not because it harms, but because it cannot be touched, because it is rooted in something eternal. It is not fragile. It is not dependent. It is not for sale. It is the power of someone who has faced their own darkness and didn't flinch. Someone who has sat in the center of their chaos and didn't run. Someone who has met every archetype that shaped their life, every ghost, every illusion, every inherited curse, and said, I see you, and I am no longer afraid. This is the power of individuation. The process Jung spoke of not as a luxury, but as a necessity, because without it, you're not living. You're reacting. You're echoing the past. You're performing for the present. You're fearing the future. But once you individuate, once you become whole within yourself, the outside world loses its grip. You're no longer chasing love. You are love. You're no longer seeking safety. You are grounded. You're no longer performing strength. You are unshakable. And from this place, everything changes. You attract differently. You speak differently. You move differently. Not from a place of need, but from a place of knowing. Because now you know who you are. Not because someone told you, not because a book described it, but because you walked into the inferno of your past, stripped away the lies, and found your soul still intact, burning, brilliant, untamed. And that soul, that is the self Jung spoke of, the integrated whole, the center that cannot be moved, the axis of being. And once you find it, you don't need to seek approval. You don't need to defend your truth. You live it. Every conversation becomes a declaration. Every boundary becomes a prayer. Every silence becomes a cathedral. And this life, this one sacred life, you stop surviving it and you start inhabiting it. Fully, fiercely, freely. So what now? Now, you live as the healed one. Not because the pain is gone, but because you've built something stronger in its place. Now, you lead. Not because you need followers, but because your path lights the way. Now, you serve. Not from obligation, but from overflow. Now, you become the blueprint for others. The living example that it's possible to walk through the inferno of fear and come out whole. You become the myth, the story told in actions, not words. And as you breathe, as you speak, as you love, you radiate a message louder than any voice ever could. I am no longer afraid. And that is the moment the scar no longer defines you. It becomes sacred. It becomes art. It becomes your initiation. You were never just wounded. You were being forged. So now, rise. Not as the broken one, not as the angry one, not as the victim, but as the soul who chose to return home, the one who walked through hell and built a kingdom from the ashes, the one who turned fear into fuel, the one who no longer needs saving because you became your own savior. And you will never forget again. You will never abandon yourself again. You will never apologize for being whole. This is the resurrection. This is the homecoming. This is what happens when you heal the scars no one can see and become someone no one can ignore. And from this day forward, everything you do, every choice, every breath, every word echoes from a center no one else can access but you. Because now you understand the greatest gift of healing is not just peace, it's freedom. Not the freedom they sell in politics or in passports. Not the freedom to do what you want, but the freedom to be, to exist without pretending, to speak without shrinking, to love without losing yourself, to stand alone without feeling abandoned, to be still in your body and not feel like you're at war with it, to look into your own eyes and see someone worth fighting for. This is the kind of freedom that terrifies people who haven't tasted it because it reveals how trapped they are. And many won't like that. They will call your peace arrogance. They will call your boundaries selfish. They will call your confidence a threat. Let them. That is their mask breaking. That is their archetypes beginning to stir. That is the light you carry shaking something asleep in them. And if they're brave, they'll begin their own return. But if they're not, they'll try to make you small again. Don't let them, because you didn't come this far to dim. You didn't bleed for clarity only to silence your truth again. You didn't excavate your soul just to put the mask back on. You came here to become, to burn, to illuminate, to embody the full spectrum of what it means to be a conscious human, flawed, sacred, shadowed, divine. You came here to break every chain they placed on you, the ones your parents carried, the ones your culture worshipped, the ones your younger self thought were love. You broke them, you shattered them, and now you walk not just healed, but holy. Not just whole, but sovereign. You are not a product of fear anymore. You are not a hostage to your childhood anymore. You are not a slave to the past anymore. You are something else now. Something ancient, something luminous, something terrifying to systems that need you asleep. You are the Miss Reborn. You are the self-made flesh. You are the one Jung wrote about, the one the world forgot, the one buried beneath years of repression and fear. And you've returned, unapologetically. And so the world will see you and try to name you, but there is no name for what you've become, because you are not here to be categorized. You are here to be remembered as the one who rose, as the one who turned scars into power, as the one who saw the face of fear and refused to bow. That is who you are now. No longer the child trapped in a fearful world, no longer the adult repeating silent patterns. You are the bridge, the fire, the truth. And wherever you walk now, others will feel it, even if they don't understand it, even if they resist it, even if they never speak it. They will feel it, because energy like yours cannot be hidden anymore. You are the awakening. You are the answer to your younger self's prayer. And everything that tried to break you only made the signal louder. You survived. You learned. You returned. And now you lead in silence, in strength, in wholeness. Let them wonder what changed. Let them feel your presence before you speak. Let them remember you long after you're gone. Because when someone like you walks fully awake, the entire world shifts. So this is where we leave behind the language of pain, the vocabulary of wounds, the dictionary of doubt. This is where the story no longer bends to fear, where the narrative no longer loops through survival, where your identity is no longer stitched together by someone else's silence, shame, or shadow. This is where you return fully to your name, not the one they gave you, the one etched into the marrow of your existence, the one whispered by the soul that chose this life long before your first breath. You are not the pain. You are not the fear. You are not the noise, the numbness, the trauma, the grief. You are the one who endured it, who transmuted it, who rose from it. And that rising, it doesn't need a crown. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't even need to be seen, because its power is not invisibility. Its power is in undeniability. You are undeniable now, not because you shout, but because you are no longer silent in the places that used to beg for your voice. Not because you've erased the past, but because you now walk forward with it as your sword, not your shackle. Not because you've become someone new, but because you've become fully you. That's the miracle. That's the revolution. You exactly as you are, exactly where you are, with every scar, every lesson, every step of this inner odyssey are already enough, already worthy, already powerful, already whole. This is your arrival, the place Jung pointed to when he said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." You've looked inside, you've awakened, and the world is no longer the same, because a soul that's remembered itself can never again be controlled, can never again be dimmed, can never again be anything less than the truth in motion. So walk now, not back into who you were, but forward into everything you already are. And let the world feel what it's never felt before. A human being who is no longer afraid,